Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. This is going to be our first real video here where we talk about some inexpensive or budget knives that are made in the USA by American companies. We're going to start off with Case Knives here with their Trapper and some other slip joint models as well as some of their more modern stuff. Buck Knives, which this is actually a buck knife. This is the first pocket knife I ever got. A lot of people I'm finding have not heard of this. It's, again, inexpensive and a fantastic knife that will hold up for many, many years. The classic Buck 110, sticking on the theme with Buck. Another great knife that I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, but gonna reemphasize how fantastic it is. Kershaw and their automatic launch series, which is, again, fantastic value for American-made knives. They have a great American flag on there, which I think is awesome. And some of their other knives and things that they're putting out. And finally, we'll end with Spyderco. More expensive than all these other previous brands, but again, they have some more inexpensive models that are fantastic and will definitely hold up for many, many years. So looking forward to it, and let's get into it here first with Case. All right, so when we look at Case Knives, of course, we have to look at their most famous model, the Trapper here. It's got two blades, many different styles, steels, things like that, patterns on the outside. Fantastic knife. It's big enough to do most jobs, but not so big that it's going to be heavy in your pocket. It's a very lightweight knife, especially compared to a lot of modern folders today. This has been around for hundreds of years, as has the company Case. This might have been their first model. I don't want to incorrectly say that, but I believe it was their first, if not one of their first models. You can do a lot with this. This is a synthetic pattern on here. It's just the generic yellow. They make this in, I think, pretty much every style of knife. They have a Stockman, Sodbuster, all kinds of different styles of knives that have this yellow synthetic. And that's probably going to be the cheapest for all those. The Trapper, full-size Trapper, is going to be about $50 depending on the steel and the pattern that you have on the outside of it. But as you can see here, we have Patriotic Kyanite. I think it's called Patriot Kyanite, which is just, I believe, some mineral or something, some sort of rock that they put on the outside. I have to double check that. But I love the look of this pattern. I have it in a couple other different styles of knife, and I think it's fantastic. It might be a little more delicate than the synthetic, but you know, it's a knife. You use it, and that's just what happens. But love that pattern. A little bit more expensive than just the yellow generic, but you know, it depends on what you're looking for. Now, they also make a mini version of the Trapper, which is a little bit smaller. You can kind of see here. I actually sometimes will carry this if I'm carrying another bigger folding knife, because this is much easier to kind of get out and deal with. It's smaller to make smaller cuts with and things like that. But size for everyone. If you have smaller hands and you don't really like the big bulky Trapper, which again, it's not really, but if that's not for you, then they do make a mini version, which is great. Next up, we have the Sodbuster up here, which is a single blade and a little bit cheaper than the Trapper because of that. I actually really like the Sodbuster because it is the single blade. I don't really use the second blade on the Trapper, but it is nice to have if you ever need it. With the Sodbuster, you know, you get the one blade. This is the full size, and they make another one called the Sodbuster Jr, which is a little bit smaller, which I actually prefer, again, because if I'm going to be carrying that, I'll probably be carrying a bigger knife with a locking mechanism as well. But I do like the smaller Sodbuster, especially the bone on this particular one. They make all Case knives in all kinds of different patterns, but I do really like the bone on this one. Sodbuster actually came about as a term, I believe, in the Great Depression, where it was kind of like an insult and derogatory term towards farmers and people who would work with the land. And Case actually came in and turned it into a knife. So they named their knife the Sodbuster, and that's when it kind of gained popularity. And it wasn't, they try to take the stigma away from that name. It's kind of a cool historical fact that you can look up. But yeah, the Sodbuster is fantastic. This full size, I believe, is going to be about $35 and just the very basic synthetic model. And they also have the yellow as well. But as you add on bone or different kinds of steel, again, you'll increase in price. But these are much cheaper than the Trapper, which is also great. Now moving into the Stockman style of knife. It has 3 blades, which can be useful, maybe not. Another super common knife that's been carried for a very, very long time. Grandfathers have carried this forever. This is your grandfather's style knife. And all these different blades have different uses and use cases for different things. But again, you're never going to not have a sharp blade because you have 3 of them. A little bit bigger than the Trapper. If we kind of put it over there, you can kind of see that. But not so big, again, that it's cumbersome in the pocket when you're carrying it. I tend to not carry the Stockman as much just because I like the slim Sodbuster and the slimmer and lighter Trapper, but it is a fantastic option. One thing I would be aware of when you're looking at purchasing a case knife or a Stockman is, I don't know if you can kind of see here, but the Stockman, it looks like this is the medium-sized Stockman, this is a large-sized Stockman. The smaller version of the Trapper and the Sodbuster is not as significantly smaller as the medium Stockman is when you go a size down. So I actually got this one first, thinking I would like to carry the Stockman, and I did not realize how small it is, actually. So you can kind of see, compared to the Sodbuster Jr., it actually is smaller than the Sodbuster Jr. So it is very small and very light in the hand. Not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're looking for this to be a kind of your primary knife or the primary thing you carry in your pocket, it might be a little bit small for some tasks. So just something to keep in mind. I prefer the large Stockman when carrying a Stockman. And finally, with Case moving into their more modern line, this is the Case Kinzua, which is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, pocket knife to carry. I love this thing. It's got a thick blade. It's got a frame lock. It's rock solid. It feels like a really, really nice knife, and it is only, when I got it, it was just over $100 at the time, but I believe they've raised the price in the past couple months. I noticed in Cabela's the other day that they have raised the price by like $30 or $40. So I think it's close to $150 now, maybe $145. So a little bit more expensive, but everything is getting expensive now. But fantastic option. It's got aluminum handles, grips, which I think is a fantastic feeling. It makes it feel, maybe more expensive or more premium or whatever you want to call it than it really is. But it is really a fantastic, fantastic knife. I also didn't really know that not a lot of people knew about it. So I think a lot of people are kind of finding out about it and making videos about it, which is fantastic. I'm happy to see that. I think it deserved the recognition a long time ago. It's been out for 1 or 2 years now, and I've had it for a long time. But definitely would recommend that. Again, one of my top knives. I'd put that in my top probably 3 knives that I own. This is the other modern kind of flipper knife that they have called the Marilla that I'm pretty sure won an award at some event or some magazine or something like that. Fantastic knife. Has a different style than the Kinzua, which I think it actually looks better. But I did have a few problems with this when I first got it. It's a little more expensive than the Kinzua. It used to be, again, I'm not sure what it is now, but it used to be like 150s, and now I think they raised it to the 180s. So a little bit more expensive, but I thought it was worth mentioning because I love these knives, and I don't think they get the recognition they deserve. The one thing you will notice on these is I actually take the pocket clips off. They come with pocket clips because I did not like Case's stock pocket clip. The screws kind of come up, and it is very hard to fully get in your pocket. As I wear jeans all the time, and it's hard to kind of get it, to rest in the pocket all the way. And I'm worried it'll fall out. So I just take the pocket clip off and put it in my pocket. It doesn't bother me. Some people that may bother, but just something to note. Case also has one other of their modern kind of line of knives called the West line, and it's an assisted liner lock. So it's a little bit bigger than both of these, I believe, and it's a more awkward blade shape. So I don't have one, but could be worth checking out. They're a little more expensive than these as well because it's an assisted opening and there's all kinds of different models, but could be another thing worth checking out. I love Case as a company. I've not had really a poor experience with them. I've not had as great of an experience with them as some other companies, but I do really appreciate the fact that they're American made and they do take pride in that. So now we'll move on to Buck here with some different options from Buck. Now with Buck knives, most of you that are familiar with knives in any sense nearly will recognize the classic Buck 110. This is one of the longest standing knives that's still sold today in stores. It's fantastic. It's very heavy. I love the wood look on it. And it's got a lockback system, which I think is nice. So this is the lockback right here. You can push that in and you're able to close the knife. I prefer that when on a bigger, style single blade like this, like I kind of just mentioned with the Sodbuster. Having that lock there is nice so it doesn't actually shut on you when you're using it. Again, fantastic knife. $65, not expensive at all. Comes with a leather sheath for you to put on your belt because it doesn't have a pocket clip, but absolutely will outlive you and outlast you if you take care of it and make sure it stays clean and oiled and everything. But amazing knife that I think everybody should look into owning one. It can do anything. But can't mention Buck without mentioning this fantastic, relatively inexpensive again knife from Buck, the Buck 110, the classic. Another Buck knife. This is the Buck Nobleman. Not made in the USA. It's one of Buck's imported knives, but it is probably going to range from, I don't know, probably $30 to $45 now. Great little knife, smaller, not as quality as some of the other ones that we've shown here. Frame lock, but it is cheap. It will get the job done. But again, it is not made in the USA. This is an imported Buck knife. So just so you're aware of that. I actually didn't know that. I thought all Buck knives were made in the USA. And then somebody told me, no, you might want to check and make sure. And this actually, the Nobleman is not made in the USA, just so you are aware. But still, great knife. If that's not important to you, being made in the USA, then might be worth looking into. Now, I think it's criminal that these are not popular Buck knives. This is the Buck Sprint Select, the first pocket knife I ever got, and it is phenomenal. Made in the USA, $65, depending on where you get it. You can actually get it for less, I think, on Amazon, $50, $55. It's a liner lock, Buck steel, Buck warranty. It is incredible. It's fun to open, fun to play with. Pretty much nothing that it can't do, similar to the Buck 110. I'm not sure why nobody talks about this. This is kind of their cheaper model of the Sprint line, product line, which we have some of the more expensive ones here I'll talk about in a second. But if you are looking for a budget USA made pocket knife to get into pocket knives, this is the perfect one. Cannot recommend anything better than this, I don't think. So nice. I actually got another one, the exact same thing, Sprint Select in another color, blue. And I think they make black, and maybe at one point they made white or gray. I'm not sure if they sell that. I know they sell black still, but totally would recommend. Now this is the Buck Sprint Ops Pro, I believe it's called. It's a discontinued model. It's a little more sturdy than the Select models, and it has a better steel. So this is just Buck's basic 420 steel, similar to the Buck 110, but the Buck 110 also comes in a bunch of different things. But budget steel. Some people care a lot about the steel that's on their pocket knives. Some people don't. But worth mentioning that this is an upgraded steel with a great heat treat on it and G10 handles or scales. So a little more robust than these. Not that much more expensive, but it is discontinued. So if you can find one on, I don't know, eBay or something, it might be worth looking into. But fantastic knife, part of the Sprint series. And finally, the Sprint Pro. This is carbon fiber. Absolutely love the look of this. Upgraded steel from the cheaper Sprint models. I think it's fantastic. Again, I'm not sure why nobody talks about these or nobody's heard of it before, but these are fantastic, fantastic knives that I think deserve to be mainstream and have everybody know about them. So definitely, if you are new to this, as was I at one point, I would take a look at the Buck Sprint series, there's something for everybody. The beginner and then the advanced collector who knows a lot about knives. And there's all kinds of different patterns and such, and blade colors and steels and things like that. So absolutely worth looking into. Another thing to mention with Buck is they have some fantastic, relatively inexpensive fixed blades. This is the Woodsman. So it's smaller, it's about the size of just a standard pocket knife, but will hold up to anything. You can camp with it, take it camping, do whatever. Comes with a great leather sheath. I prefer leather sheath over any of the other Kydex or things like that, just because I like the traditional look and feel of them. But worth looking into. They have the Buck 119, which is the one that's used in like the Scream movies and things. I think that's actually the 120 general, but they all look similar. They have like the black handle and the classic clip point looking blade. So worth looking into. This is only, I believe, $65. The 119 I think is $75, but again, for what you're getting in the Buck lifetime warranty, it's relatively inexpensive compared to a lot of other brands that again will outlive you and outlast you. And finally, if you're a big camper, this is Buck's camp knife, the Compadre 104, made with higher quality steel materials, got micarta scales, which is fantastic. So very premium, just barely over $100. I think I paid, I get almost every knife that I get on sale. I won't buy a knife if it's not on sale. So I paid a lot less for this, but believe retail about $110. Come with a sheath that is made in the USA. You can see on there, proudly made in the USA. Again, Buck's lifetime warranty and the Buck quality that comes with the name. So fantastic brand, worth looking into. And now we'll move on to the Kershaw Launch series. So with the Kershaw brand, you have a handful of knives that are made in the USA and a lot that are not, that are kind of imported from their parent company, Kai. The Kershaw Launch series, however, which is their automatic knife series, is entirely made in the USA. This is the only one that I have. This is the Launch 6. It retails for about $130, depending on where you get it. And it feels like a super high quality knife. It is very well made. I've never had any issues with it at all. A lot of my friends like Kershaw, and like for good reason. They're very well made knives that will last you a very long time. Again, if you take care of them, and they feel much more premium than they are. This is a fantastically priced knife in today's market of knives where everything seems to be overpriced, but fantastic. Great steel on here as well, 154 steel, which is very strong. Again, unless you're using this every day and really beating on it, you're not going to be able to tell a difference with a super steel. My favorite thing about the Kershaws that are made in the USA is this little etched American flag that's on the aluminum of all of them. The ones that are made in the USA either have it on the blade or on the scales, and I think that I just really like that. I don't know, that's a great, I think, feature that they added. But Kershaw Launch series, would look into it if you're looking for, again, relatively inexpensive automatic knife. It's going to be almost impossible to find an automatic knife made in the USA at that cheap of a price. So would recommend it, the Kershaw Launch series. And now we'll talk briefly about some of the cheaper Spydercos. With Spyderco, we have the Native series of knives. This is the Native 5. It's a lockback knife, again, more traditional style like the Bucks we discussed earlier and the cases. More of a traditional locking mechanism that's not really widely used today except by Spyderco. Still works very well. It's just harder, like if you try to play with your knives, it's a little hard to play with, but it will not fail on you. It's fantastic. These are a little smaller. They make another knife called the Little Native, which is even smaller than this and cheaper. This retails for about $125. I think Spyderco is actually raising their prices though soon, so it might be a little bit more than that in a couple days or weeks. But one of the cheaper Spydercos that is made in the USA. You can see Golden, Colorado on the blade of these. That's where they're made. Another thing to mention briefly is that Spyderco does have a lot of cheaper knives. This is the Tenacious, but it is made in China. in my opinion, I don't know if I just got a different one or a bad one, but it doesn't really feel like the ones that are made in the USA. It sticks a little bit, harder to open and close. There's some squeaky, and I try to oil it and play with the pivot a lot, but can't seem to get rid of it. Not necessarily saying it's a bad knife. It's only $50. So great option if you're looking to get into Spyderco at a great price. But it is, you can tell a difference when you're comparing it to some of Spyderco's other knives, just because they're so fantastically well made. So could be worth looking at as well. The Tenacious, again, if made in the USA is not super important to you, it is to me. I still have this one, but primarily I stick to the knives that are made in Golden, Colorado by Spyderco. This is another version of the Native 5, a little bit more expensive at $150. It is Magna Cut steel, which is the new rage today. It's, super steel, won't corrode, super tough, and will hold an edge forever. I haven't really got a chance to use this too much, so I can't say, oh yeah, it's fantastic, but do have it. Looking forward to using it, and we'll see how it goes with that. But again, great line of knives, the Native line. There's a bunch of different knives that fall within them. Now, another thing I wanted to mention with Spyderco, because they are typically seen as a more expensive, more premium brand, is Spyderco Factory Seconds. That's where Spyderco has a sale, usually once or twice a year, where they offer knives that were not up to the standard of Spyderco's production, and they offer them at a massive discount. And so you'll see on this blade here, this little notch, which none of these other ones have that. You can see it's just kind of a smooth knife right there. But this little notch on the blade indicates that it is a factory second from Spyderco, meaning it did not live up to their standards. So most of the time, there's really nothing noticeably wrong with them if you're going to be using it. If you're collecting, maybe. But like I cannot tell what's wrong with this particular one. This is a Manix 2. You can get them, I think actual retail, they're like $180. But again, with factory seconds, look on eBay. If you don't live in Colorado and you can't go to the sale, look on eBay. Look for Spyderco's sales online, and you can get them more than half off. It's like 60% off sometimes. So great way to get into Spyderco at a fantastic price. I paid like $70 for this. There's literally nothing wrong with it. You can't tell anything. I've taken it apart and looked for everything. I haven't found anything wrong with it. Another factory second. This is the Native Chief. So much larger than the Native 5, as you can kind of see here. The blade is much larger. A lot more expensive too. However, this again as well is a factory second. We can kind of see the notch on the blade there. You can tell with this one because the G10 is all scuffed up. The scales are scuffed up. And when I got it, it was not centered. Centered meaning the blade was not in the middle of the scales here. Took it apart, put it back together, fixed that issue. So the only thing is the G10, which was messed up a little bit. But again, I got this like 70+% off from retail, and I use it and carry it frequently, and I love it. So great way to get into Spyderco's for cheap. Usually just over $100 for some of their more expensive ones. The Manix is not one of their more expensive ones, I guess. So you can find these a lot cheaper, factory seconds on eBay. Look online. If you live in Golden, Colorado, and you're lucky, go to the sale, grab one. They're amazing. Spyderco, I think, objectively, I don't love all their designs the most compared to some of the other knives I own, but I think objectively they are the most well-built brand around. And I think a lot of people recognize that. There's some haters out there, but they're a fantastic brand. Warranties are amazing on Spyderco's. The company's great, and they're trying to bring a lot of their production back to USA, which is another great thing to add. But that'll wrap up this video. If there's anything else that you'd like to add, please let me know. Any other brands or models that you think should have been mentioned, let me know. But I really appreciate you watching, and we'll keep the videos coming. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.